Now, useEffect can be tricky to use though, because right now it runs all the time. It combines component did mount and component did update. Now, what if we were to send an HTTP request here, but we only want to do that when the component is rendered for the first time and not for every re-render cycle? What would we do then? To highlight this problem, let's add a set timeout call here, and maybe add a timeout of 1 second. And after the second, this function will execute. And I'm just doing this to kind of fake an HTTP request here. This is, of course, no HTTP request, but it takes some time to finish and then does something. And what it does here is it should throw an alert. Saved data to cloud. Now, we might be fine with that alert showing when we really saved something to the cloud, so when this component loaded, for example. Or maybe we fetch data from the cloud. Doesn't matter. So therefore, we would be fine with seeing this if we reload. Okay. And now I click here and yeah, I get this again. Thank you. And I click here and I want to delete something and I get this again. Now, this might not be what I want. How can I control when this actually executes? For example, let's say this should only execute, because it is saving data to the cloud, when our person's changed, but not on any other condition. Well, for that, you can add a second argument here to useEffect. That second argument is an array where you simply point at all the variables or all the data that actually are used in your effect. Right now, React is not smart enough to find out on its own, and actually here it couldn't because we're not using any data in here. But if we know we only want to run this code when our person's changed, well, then you simply add props persons here. Now, by the way, if you have different effects that depend on different data, you can use useEffect more than once. That is absolutely fine. You can have as many useEffect setups here or functions as you want. So now this effect should only execute when our person's changed. So if I reload this, it runs initially. And if I toggle my persons now, there's no alert because persons didn't change. If I type an I of course get it again because that changes my persons. If I toggle persons, it does not come again because that didn't change my persons. So that is already an improvement. It allows us to control when this executes, which is very useful. What if we now only want to execute this when the component renders the first time? Well, for this, there is a little shortcut, so to say. You can pass an empty array. You have to pass an array, that's important, but it's empty. This tells React this effect has no dependencies and it should rerun whenever one of the dependencies changes. Now, if you have no dependencies, they can never change and therefore this can never rerun. It will run for the first time, that is the default, but it will never run again. So now, therefore, we get this initially, but thereafter, we can do whatever we want and this does not come back. So if you just need component did mount, you would use useEffect with an empty array passed as a second argument to the useEffect function. If you have a dependency on a certain field, you do what we did before. You pass that field in here. And of course, you can have multiple fields you depend on.